Hello and welcome everybody. Happy Monday. So this session is going to be where we're going to talk about the new features to AC Stats for the 2024 collection year. Let's go ahead and get started. Adam's going to drive for me while I talk. The very first thing that we've changed, and it's kind of multifaceted, is that forgot password. So it used to be that if somebody forgot their password, they would click on it, the message would pop up, please contact your district or conference for assistance. If you have, let's say, 100 churches contact you, that's a lot of phone calls. So we have fixed this. And this is where the multifaceted comes into play. So now when you click on forgot password, it's going to ask the user for your username. So that's new. We've now created a username that is separate from the email address. Those are now two distinct fields. Excuse me. So we'll ask them to enter in their username and then click reset password. They're going to get a generic message that basically says, if we have you in our database, have your email on file, we will send you your reset password link. It works just like any other forgot password, Amazon, whatever it may be. The link is good for about 20 minutes and then it will expire. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when we open up the year, we open it up and bring over the conference users and the district user accounts. We do not bring over the church accounts, right? Due to the fact you're going to have turnover at a church level. So we just don't pull those over. So what we've done to create the username for conference and district users is we've just copied copied the email address. Whatever the email address is, that's now your username. You can go in and change that. Or you can leave it as the email address if that's what you'd like. Let's go ahead and close that, Adam, and log in. And that way we can show what I'm talking about. So if you go under security and settings, remember this is always one of your first steps, and you look at the account management. Go ahead and click on, Conference User. So you can see all we did was copy the email over into the username and create two separate fields. You can change that if you want to be whatever it may be, whether it be Adam Shelton, and let's say that's his email address. And then therefore you'll have two distinct usernames and email addresses. This really is going to come into play for churches where you have pastors that are over more than one church. They can have 3 different usernames and 1 email. Okay, so when you go ahead and try to add when you try to add a new person or a new user, you are going to see that we have the username field in there as well. So that's one of the big changes that's really going to help out with this forgot password. I did forget to mention, of course, as always, if you have any questions, either unmute yourself and ask your question, or of course you can put it in the chat. I am monitoring that as we're talking. That's why you'll see me look to the side because I'm looking over at the chat and also making sure that everybody is in the call and not sitting in the waiting room. So. All right, so that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing I want to talk about is let's talk about the PDF printing. So if you've been here long enough to have worked in Ezra, one of the things that Ezra had was where you could print out a PDF printing of the yearly report. You could print out a blank report, but we hadn't had that in AC Stats. So we now have it where you can go in under print. And then let's pull up the comparison one. And there you can see it's comparing last year's and it has this year. Right now, they're all going to be zeros because we haven't put anything in. You can see it printed up, or it will print pretty nicely. We did break it by tables. So because a lot of churches will pass out, you do table 1, you do table 2, and somebody else will do table 3. We did have it where it now breaks nicely at the table. And we also have it where we put the header information at the top with the church name and the conference and etc. So that's another function that we have that's new. The third function, let's go to the conference dashboard. So this has come about because we have had conversations with folks at the conference and district level where the church will go in to do their stats and they'll say, that's not my pastor information, or you all will notice the pastor information is not correct. Historically, we've given the option for you just to hide the pastor information so it doesn't show. But we took it a step further this year. This year, you as a conference can decide that you want to allow your churches to change their pastor information on their stats report. That will only update that in stats. Let me say that again. If you choose to allow your churches to update their pastor information, it will only update it in stats. It will not update it in the main in the main database. So this is just the first step of it, which is where you'll flip the toggle switch to either allow churches to add the pastor information, or the default is it is turned off and you are not allowing them to edit the pastor information. To show you what that looks like, if you do say you're going to allow them to edit the pastor information, it's under the church details. You can see the little checkbox there that says, I want to update my pastor information. Right now, the way it is, uncheck it for a sec for me. Thank you. Right now, the Test McTesterson, that is the pastor name from Chronicles, and that's why it's grayed out. If you want them to be able to change it and they check that checkbox, now you can see they can edit those 3 fields for pastor name, pastor email, and pastor phone. Those changes will be what prints out on all the reporting throughout AC Stats. Again, it does not have it hand back to Chronicles. I see, Rochelle, you've raised your hand. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So I typically try to go in and update all of our pastors prior to reporting starts.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way to go ahead and do that? Because I guess we haven't gotten to that point yet to see when the system will be available to our churches. But that's something I've already started communicating that it won't be available before December 1st.
Right.
So
So right now, AC Stats is available for all conference users. We have opened it up to the conferences, so you can go in and start making the changes and reviewing everything, reviewing your questions, all of the things to get it started. You decide when you're going to open it to the church, and whether that be, most folks do it just January 1st, but you're ahead of the game if you open it up on December 1st. Because opening it December 1st, you're going to miss that last month of attendance and any income or expenses that may have come in. Did that answer your question?
yes, it did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely. So if you decide as a conference that I don't want my churches to update their pastor information, you just don't flip the toggle switch off the dashboard, that checkbox won't even show up. If you say, nope, we're not going to do it, the box doesn't show up, and the churches are none the wiser that other conferences may have that option. Okay. Next, we can go back to the dashboard. So another change that we have, this has come about, it's the district read-only option. So some conferences, after all the churches have submitted their stats, some conferences only a conference level user is going to go in and review everything and approve everything and go from there. But some conferences have their districts look at it first, and then the conference will go through and look at it after the district is completed their look or their checks. The problem comes in is if you are a conference that has both the districts do any approving and reviewing, and you are also, how do you get it so that the districts don't make changes while you're going in and try to review and edit? So we have these toggles now. You can set your districts to be read only. They'll have all the other functionality. They can run reports, they can pull up information, they can do all the things except for edit their church. They cannot unsubmit, edit, any of that. And then the other toggle that says allow districts to reset churches is some conferences say, I don't want my districts to have that ability to just reset an entire church. And that's where that toggle will take place. You can have one or both turned on. It is not a either or type of thing. Okay. Give me 1 second. I've got to admit somebody back in. Okay, so that's the new district read only option. Let's talk a little bit about, if you scroll down, Adam, at the bottom, the second one up from the bottom, it says final validation check. So what happens is one of the things after you submit your stats, Adam will go through and he reviews everybody's stats. And you probably got the email. Thank you so much for submitting your stats. I found these things I want to talk to you about. One of them is he'll ask you about your at-large membership. As you can see, we did put that in the system now. So we're just going to ask you to key it in right here on your dashboard. You can see we did training earlier. That's why it has a value in there. Sorry about that. But the other one, that final validation check, this comes from if a church is keying all their information in, those validation checks are happening to make sure that membership, ethnicity, and gender all equal. But if those values are uploaded, it's not checked because you're not into the actual account for that church. So we have this button now, and this will, if you click on show results, it looks through the system to see what churches we have in your, or what churches you have in your conference where those three numbers do not match: membership, ethnicity, and gender. And then that gives you the opportunity to review it, correct it, and then re-click in here again. So it will be a real-time fix and showing on the report. And that also is something that Adam has sent back in the past through the emails. This just kind of heads it off at the pass and takes care of it ahead of time. Okay, so let's talk about reporting. Excuse me, we have a couple of things. One is the custom export report. That's not new. What is new about it is we found out just at the end of stats. One of the conferences reached out and let us know that they were trying to run this for their conference for the last 4 years for all their churches and all the fields. And when they first ran it for 1 year, it only took a minute to run, which sounds pretty understandable, pretty acceptable. But when they ran it for 4 years, it ran for 14 minutes, to which I 100% agreed that was not acceptable. So we did some fixing on the back end on how the data is pulled and everything. And now for that conference for 4 years, we have it down to around 1.5 minutes for it to run. Now, of course, for your conference, that may go higher or lower, depending how many churches you have and what your options are that you choose. But I just want to let you know that we did make some tweaks to this report to have it run a little bit more efficiently. Another report that we have, or this is a new one, this is called charts reports. If you were here in the days of Ezra, one of the things that you could run is you could run all the charts for all your churches, and that's all for those that key demographics or that those key KPIs, right? Show me membership over the last however many years. Show me attendance. Show me income, expenses, etc. It's the charts that we have currently out on Data. Well, now we've brought it in here that you as a conference can go in, you can choose your churches individually, or you can say, give them all to me. What'll happen when you click download report, it'll take a bit because you can imagine, let's say you have 100 churches and you're building all these charts. So we've kind of set it up ahead of time. So Adam's going to show you the download. It'll just download into a zip file. And when you open it up, it's going to show you one PDF for every church. And it's going to be in alphabetical order. And then if we open one up, there we go. So here are the charts for Alford UMC. And you can see it's just going to show just the various charts that we already have out on Data. And this is the reporting that we also did in Ezra. Any questions on these new features and changes that we've made so far? Perfect. I just have a couple things more to talk about. We are still making a few little tweaks. Something that came up this morning and also on Friday when we did the full stats training is if you go into the church details page, that yellow box at the top, we've had a couple conferences say, I want to edit that. I want to have my own message there. I don't want your generic messaging there. So we're going to work to try to get that changed before the beginning of January, where that becomes an editable area. You go back to the dashboard. It'll work similar to the conference note for local churches that shows up on the actual report page at the top. It's going to work just similar to that, only it'll be what shows up on the church details page. But that's something that came out of the two calls today and Friday. And then we had another request that came up that we're going to look at. And I don't know if this one will go in by the first of the year or not. But we have in the beginning forgot password. And somebody brought up a good point. What if they forget their username? So we're looking at making that change also. Forgot password is huge. Forgot username, I'm sure, is going to be just as huge. So those are the two things that we're working on additionally to get us to the very beginning of kicking off the new year. Okay. That was all that I had today. It was a quick, I know I scheduled us for an hour, and that was just to anticipate any questions that people had. Adrian, yes, what can I do for you?
Morning. Sorry, I was moving around between devices, so I couldn't talk about this early. Yeah. Usernames, yes. Okay, that will be great because I'm pretty sure that that people will actually know their email, but they'll probably have forgotten, especially if they have to choose multiple usernames. Is there any advice though on for local churches on choosing usernames? Yeah, because obviously if you only are working in one church, it makes more sense, doesn't it, to be your email address? Because right. then you know.
Then you know and you remember exactly. What we've been talking about in the full sessions is when you have pastors that are over multiple churches, is to put like their name and then the church. So maybe, Adrian Pell, First UMC, Adrian Pell, Grace UMC. Just some kind of some way to delineate which church they're at.
Right, because I'm trying to wonder what to suggest to people, because they probably won't remember what they chose in that sense.
100%.
Which is why the username stuff actually is good, but it maybe so when it causes a different problem.
Exactly.
On the pastor updating stuff you were talking about earlier,
Mhm.
how does that interact with us updating stuff from Chronicles?
Great question. I did forget to talk about that. So if you if you have it where you can allow them to make the changes, right, and you hit import information again, let's say you see that the change needs to be made in Chronicles, and you import it, then you have to go in and just uncheck their box, and then they'll see whatever that information is that comes from Chronicles. So, Adam, if you can pull up that one church that we've been using. So right now we have that Adam updated this church's information, but if you go in and uncheck the box, it takes it back to whatever is in Chronicles. We,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
okay. No, I'm just trying to work out how on earth to explain that to somebody. Or yeah, maybe. Okay, all right. Um, because
The
more
other,
likely we because that sort of thing, at least for me, it happens in a different part of the organization. So
mhm,
I won't even know if that's changed in Chronicles. I won't even look there. I won't even know if it's been updated. So I'll probably leave it the way it was. But okay, if they have set their own
mhm.
pastor name there, then updating it in Chronicles rather will not change that.
It will not change that, correct. It will
Which
show
is
whatever they typed in. If they typed in um,
yeah,
Adam is the greatest pastor ever, it's going to show Adam is the greatest pastor ever. We don't do
right.
any checks and balances there. The other thing is we are working to have a report, and I'm glad you had asked because I forgot to mention that. We're working to have a report that'll show up at the bottom that basically is if you allow your churches to make that change, let's have a report to show what churches changed it so that some research can be done because we always
Yeah,
live by the trust but verify adage. So this way we can see what it is, what it should be, and then we can either make the change or not. We can always remove it off of this information of what's displayed.
sure. And I wasn't quite watching there, Adam, what you did, but does that update pastor name, email, and phone?
Yes.
Is that all three of
Mm-hmm.
those were fixed otherwise and updatable? Yeah, okay. Because often the phone doesn't come through from other places for good reasons. People change them.
Right. 100%.
Yeah,
Okay. Anything
okay.
else, Adrian?
Can
Not for me at the moment, but I'm thinking. Carry on.
Okay. Joy, go ahead. I see your hand up. I'm sorry. You're muted, Joy.
Sorry.
That's
Um,
okay.
First, thanks so much for having this ready earlier in the year. It's a huge help. Um,
Absolutely.
Question, I just want to go back over the updated pastors coming in from Chronicles and make sure that we can do that the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, is Chronicles syncing with our Brick River database or not?
It is not. And a lot of that stems with we are working to get we're doing two different things. Number one, we're working with, if you're a conference that's on Mission Connect, we're working with Al and Jacob to get GCFA IDs into Mission Connect so that when we do pull your data and try to sync it, we can do those matching along GCFA ID to GCFA ID. Because while there may only be, for example, one Leslie Oren, easy to match on names. But if I have a John Smith, is that John or Johnny or Jack or Jonathan or what? So having that GCFA ID is crucial. If you're Brick River, right, we're working with Paul on the back end to be able to have that uh, syncing happen a little bit easier where we can match up again the GCFA ID and match it GCFA to GCFA ID. So we're working right now with Mission Connect and Brick River in order to be able to get that done. In the meantime, we've gone backwards where we're doing a lot of the manual, going through the appointment booklets and seeing how it is online. We have worked with Paul and his team from Brick River to create some checks and balances on our side to be able to help us with showing what the current appointment looks like. And then we'll have your appointment booklet, and we're kind of comparing all the way down. So that's a long answer to say, Joy, we are not automatically pushing a button and syncing your data in. No.
Okay, so the best way for me to make sure that we do the best we can having the right pastor there is to print out a list from AC Stats and print out our list from Brick River and compare them.
You can either pull it from AC Stats or you can pull it directly from Chronicles. Because I believe, Joy,
right,
I've seen you in Chronicles, right? So yeah, you can pull it.
Not me, but somebody at the conference.
Okay, perfect.
That's the issue, is I don't do the other piece of that.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right, so that answers that question. Second question, you were mentioning about that final validation and making sure membership, ethnicity, and gender match.
Yes.
What happens when they don't? We have
go ahead.
We have 60 federated churches, and they are not required to do the whole form, so we don't get that information from them. So it's not going to match for them.
Right. And when it doesn't match like that, we know for federated, yoke, etc., that they are not always going to match. That's something that we're aware of. But this just allows you to have that visualization ahead of time.
So I can just look down the list, and I know the federated churches, and then the other ones I should correct.
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. And then just one more question. Do you have an updated guidance for people counting online attendance? I know you were asking a lot of questions this year about it.
We don't have an updated one yet. We are working with, I wanted to get 2024 stats out first, and then we're having setting up a focus group from different conferences, and all jurisdictional representation to talk about, so we can try to get something that works for everybody along those lines for that.
All right. Yeah, I would just love to have it. We have some people that report, very questionable numbers, and they push back when I push back on them. And I'd like to have something to back me up on it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Trust me, we see those numbers from, and I'm not pointing directly at your conference. We see those numbers as a whole across all the conferences that we question, and we question some of the others, like what's the big one that just came through last year? Oh, number of households that have pledged. And we had somebody that had, for example, I think it was like 500 members, and they had 10,000 members or pledges. I was like, that math doesn't really math there. So yeah, absolutely. I'm with you, Joy.
All right.
Any other questions?
That's my questions. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. I've been watching, and Rochelle, you were next in line.
Okay, thank you. When Adrian was talking earlier, and we had this issue last year with having the churches be able to review their details, and the details was wrong, so we just got overwhelmed with notifications of changes and stuff like that. So we hid that information, and unfortunately I did come in like a couple of minutes late. The hide feature is still there, correct?
That is correct. 100%. We did not take that away. We just took it a step further to allow people to change it if they wanted to give their churches that ability. Again, you may not have been in when I was saying it, but you don't have to allow your churches the ability to key in their pastor information. You can just basically hide it here, or if you want to show it, you can just say it is what it is. You don't have the ability to change it.
We're meeting with our district and auditors on tomorrow. So we'll start pulling the list of what's in there already and seeing if we can make the adjustments. It would be nice if we could do it in Chronicles. So I guess LaTarsha is still the person to get in contact with to see if our list compares, and it's only the senior pastor, correct?
Right. Yep. Well, it's the most senior person, right? So if it's a senior person, if you have two co-pastors, we take the one whose appointment is the oldest. So It's not just senior pastors. It's
Okay.
whoever is and I hesitate using the phrase highest ranking pastor, but that's how we look at that.
I get where you're going.
Okay, good. Whew.
And then my last question would be with the login. Very much so appreciate that pastors who are at multi-point charges are going to be able to, have different usernames.
Mm-hmm.
My only other question is that we give out the initial password for people to log in and create or login information for people to go in and create their account.
Yes.
Last year, we ran into the problem of people still going in the original way, using their GCFA number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and stuff like that. Is there a way to restrict them from entering information from there? Because they could still go in and enter information when logging in to that point, I think, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. No, that is accurate. We haven't looked at that. That might be something that we can look at next year, that if they put in their GCNO number, that it does not allow them to make edits that they have to put in. But I want to think about that a little bit more and about any potential ramifications or different scenarios about that. But I can tell you that's not available this year.
My only concern, in your thought process when you start thinking about it for future is if like, say, for instance, I don't think anybody would ever do this, but say, for instance, an old pastor accidentally goes into his old church or something like that through that route, you have no way of showing who made what changes when you go in that way.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. That's a great point, and definitely we'll look into what we can do with that for sure.
Okay. And then the lady before me asked, is the old information on how to log in still out there? We're meeting with our districts on tomorrow to go through this and get their thoughts to see what we need to put in place prior to making it accessible to the churches. And I just wanted to make sure, or nothing has changed on this report. So the information that we had from last year is still accurate as far as login and stuff like that, right?
Logins for conference and district users only. Church users were all removed.
Okay.
Right. And that's just because it clears out all the churches. One thing I did want to point out from a security perspective, this only happened once, thank goodness, and it happened last year, but I just wanted to point out, Adam, if you can go to the church details for somebody. So here, this church password, that only shows up for y'all as a conference user. The churches don't see this or anything. This is the global password that y'all set up for your conference, right? So this is what Adam set up for our demo conference. We had a call last year where a church had some issues, and I don't even know and didn't want to know the issues they had at their church with personnel, where they had to remove them from a leadership position, and they wanted to make sure that they could not get into the AC Stats system and do anything potentially malicious. So we now have this church password. So if Adam goes in and changes this, it will only change it for this GCNO. All the others will still have their global GCNO. So I just kind of want to point that out. Okay.
John, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. John, I saw your hand up next.
When you were talking about the charts, you mentioned data. How do we get to that now?
Sure. Adam, can you pull up another screen and go to umdata.org? So if you haven't been out on the new site, this is our new site, of course. If you go to charts, you can either access it down below there or up here on the top navigation.
Well, I can't even get there. How is it just www.umdata or?
Yep, www.umdata.org.
I'm getting a sorry not found on my URL.
Oh, John, how about you and I, after this call, get together? I'll send you a link and we can walk through and see if we can figure out what's
Okay.
happening. Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions, Sean?
No.
Okay. Adrian?
Back to me again. I thought that if you signed in with the GC No and the whatever the default password is, that it gave you a list of users. So and you had a choice of either selecting one of those users or creating a new user. There wasn't any anonymous there. Is that still correct?
That is, if you come in here, go ahead. Let's wait for Adam to, hopefully he remembers the password he just changed it to. There we go.
Yes.
Yes. So it is already there. You're absolutely correct. So Rochelle, I think that was you that was talking about somebody coming in here and making changes without registering themselves. Adrian, thank you for remembering that. That was completely slipped my mind.
Because
you have to do that.
And the reason is that actually, perhaps the obverse to what Rochelle was saying, I'd actually quite like to remove all the passwords for individual users and the individual users and just send them in this way, because it's a darn sight easier to tell them how to get there than say, well, have you remembered your password? Do you know your username? What's the, et cetera, et cetera. I just send people back this way.
And then have them choose who they are after?
Yes.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just go in that way, click, this is me, and you're done.
There you go. Yeah, that works. Absolutely.
That's actually somewhat easier. And I suspect that because people had trouble with the sign up form, the click here to register form, and adding a username to that is not going to help.
Fair. Fair.
It's, it really isn't.
My only concern was that, Adrian, is because it's a global password. So if they just click on this is me, they can use another user. Unless when we get them to this point, we make them make a unique password just for their church, and the church can communicate within themselves. But that would be my only concern is once you use the GCFA number and the global password, they can click on any one of those individuals. And there's no security beyond this point to say, oh, that this is really the pastor, or this is really Sue, or this is really John. There's nothing to say beyond that.
That's true. I've never actually considered the security here to be sort of bank level security. So I've never worried about that. But if that's a concern for you, then that's fine. For me, I'm less concerned. But there we are.
Yeah, I see where you're both coming from for sure. Again, this is something we'll look at and see what we can do to help from a security perspective. And I've got some IT folks that I'll pull in and talk about it with here at GCFA and get their thoughts for sure. All great conversation. I love it. I love it. What else?
Probably all good.
Okay. Thank you all. John, if you want to stay on, we can just talk right now. John and Adam, since Adam, you're driving, we can just stay on the call and see if we can figure out your data issue. But for everybody else, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for all the great conversation. If I don't talk to you between now and Thanksgiving, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. GCFA will be closed the week of Thanksgiving. Leadership has blessed us with having that whole week off. So I'm very excited, but you know as well as I do, I'm going to be checking email. So if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. But again, thank you again and happy Thanksgiving.